and the benefits that it had. And I was telling Jessica, I think we should get an ABA expert to come in and speak. She's like, you know I am one, right?
Well, I didn't say
No, expert. No, she said, but I'm like, Jessica, we're lucky to have her as part of our organization and as an 11Q mom. So she can relate not only with the Jacobson syndrome, but she's also a behavioral therapist who is trained in ABA. So she has a lot of great insight for us. So she's going to talk to us today about ABA and how we can use it.
Thanks, Lindsay. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. So basically, I'm going to tailor this to ABA at home. Prior to having children, prior to even meeting Eric, I went into the field of special ed, and I worked with children with autism. So this was something that, you know, I knew my heart was in prior to all of that. And then I have a child who has a developmental disability and is probably as behavioral as they get. And the irony is not lost on me. But there's a really big difference, I think, to the ABA that can be done in school versus at home. Things they can do at school are simply not reasonable to do at home. And once having children, it became so much clearer to me because I often, part of my job, first I was a teacher and then I was a home therapist, and I went into the homes and I would sit and observe and see what the problems were, and I would offer the parents solutions and tricks, you know, and things to try. And, you know, they all sounded great on paper, and I think some of these parents were probably like, yeah, wait till you have a kid, you know, because I think they might have been great in theory, but it really wasn't practical for them to do this at home. So I'm going to try to talk about things that are actually reasonable and realistic to be able to do at home. So, and I saved, there aren't many slides. Eric's deployed right now, so I've got, you know, me, 3 kids, and the dog, and not a lot of time for anything. So the slides are minimal, but I figure discussion can be, you know, as many things as you want to talk about. So, Nola, this is for you. What is ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis? Applied Behavior Analysis is the science in which procedures derived from the principles of behavior. Okay, so there's a whole science out there. This isn't just something that, you know, someone came up with randomly. There's experimental stuff going on to prove that this works. They're systematically applied to, this is the most important part, improve socially significant behavior to a meaningful degree. So socially significant for you might be different than socially significant for you. It's about you. This is individual. So the research out there, you know, it might work for one child and not for another. It has to be related to you and to a meaningful degree. So if something changes just a little bit and it's not meaningful to you, then what's the point of going through all this stuff if it's really not affecting behavior change? So that's the most important part. And then you want to demonstrate experimentally that the procedures employed were responsible for that improvement in behavior. So, you know, was it that you started doing this behavioral change, or did you also introduce Ritalin at the same time? Well, now you don't know what had the effect. So you want to do one thing at a time so that you're able to narrow down what actually had the effect on behavior. So for the behavioral approach, all behaviors are learned, and behaviors can also be unlearned. Our goal as behavior analysts is to increase appropriate behaviors and decrease inappropriate behaviors. So the question then becomes, why do people engage in inappropriate behaviors? These are the 4 functions of behavior. There's attention, which I think is fairly obvious, although we can think of attention in different ways, and sometimes attention is as subtle as eye contact. And so you think, oh no, I ignored that behavior. I didn't give him any attention. Well, you didn't yell, maybe you didn't, you know, clap your hands, or you didn't say shh, but you looked at him and you gave him eye contact. That might have been all he needed to keep going. So you have to be really mindful of these subtle little things. Escape and avoidance. So that is how we were talking before about in the room too loud and you're going like this, instead of going like this, if he didn't have that strategy, he might just start screaming. And everyone's like, oh my God, why is he screaming? What's going on over there? Well, he wants to escape this situation, and he knows if I start screaming, Mom's going to run in and grab me out of here. So that could be another reason. Let's just say my son was having a really hard time in math in school. And his behaviors were through the roof during math because math was really hard for him. And looking back, they didn't change the way they were teaching him. They just kept trying it every day the same way. It's like Groundhog Day. And now he's in a new school, and they started teaching him with something called touch math. And guess what? My boy knows how to add now. And this is like 3 months later. So all it took was a different way. He was trying to escape like crazy every single day until they taught him differently. How easy was that? I mean, all you had to do is teach him a different way, and now he's not escaping and avoiding math. Access to a desired item or activity. This one's in my house all the time. One boy has a toy, the other boy wants it, so they they do that sort of sibling thing to get the item. You might see a child, hitting their head when they see someone playing with the Ninja Turtle that they want, because they don't have the expressive language to tell you, I want that Ninja Turtle. And then there's sensory feedback, which could be why Zion is engaging in the behavior, like the cat behavior and everything. He might just like how it feels. That just might feel good to him. And that one's really the hardest one to extinguish, because there's no external force that is keeping it going. It is just inside of them that, I know I'll do this sometimes when I'm sitting there. I'll have my leg, and I'll move my whole leg while I'm sitting still. And then I realize I'm doing it, and I'll stop. But no one's giving me any attention for it. I'm not escaping anything, and I'm not getting anything for it. So obviously, in some way, it's just kind of keeping me going, keeping me awake, I don't know. But that would be another reason why kids could engage in behavior. So according to behaviors, these are the 4 reasons that behaviors occur. So remember, all behaviors are learned, all behaviors can be unlearned. So the next thing is, once you determine why your child is engaging in the undesired behavior, then you need to come up with an effective consequence. So I want to think about consequences beyond timeout. I feel like I'll say in America at least, I can't talk to other countries, but I feel like timeout has become this everyone uses that, as their first line of defense. Okay, well, just go put them in timeout. Just do this. And that's really not always effective, because we just talked about there are 4 functions of behavior. And if they're trying to escape the situation and you put them in timeout, guess what you just did? You reinforced that behavior. So now, anytime, was it Pedro? Wants to get out of the noisy room, he's going to scream, because he realized when I scream, Mommy comes, and I get out of here, and she puts me in timeout because I'm screaming. Great, I get out of this room. So we need to know, this is the most important thing. If you take away anything from my talk right now, it's that you need to find out why they're engaging in the behavior before you give them a consequence or a reaction. If it's an attention-seeking behavior, you need to remove attention. And like I said, the eye contact, all you need to do is look at them engaging in the behavior, and you just gave them attention. So maybe you didn't say anything. Maybe you didn't, yell at them, but you looked. So you have to train yourself. This is very difficult. I'm not saying this is easy. And disclaimer, I forgot to disclose this in the beginning. Don't think that I am perfect at home, because I am really not. And I'm actually harder on myself, because often I'll know what the right response is, and I just can't manage it. And because it's hard. It's honestly hard. And but with an attention-seeking behavior, as hard as it is, sometimes, you have to ignore it. And then the other component is that you need to teach them how to effectively and appropriately seek that attention. So, for example, let's just say your child starts hitting his head, and then you go running over, oh, no, honey, you're going to hurt yourself. Don't do that. If the reason your child is doing that behavior was to get your attention, you just gave it to him. So what you need to do is ignore him when he does it. And I'm not advocating that you sit there and allow him to hurt himself. You could come up from behind him and put his hands down so that he can't hurt himself any longer. But you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to look at him. You don't want to reprimand him. No attention. And then later on, you want to say, hey, if you want my attention, if he's verbal, you can teach him, hey, mommy, I need you for a minute. If he's not verbal, and whatever way he communicates, if it's a picture exchange system, if it's sign language, you want to teach him the way to do that. And always model that for him over and over throughout the day. Think of all these as opportunities, teaching opportunities. So rather than think of it as dealing with a negative behavior, think of it as dealing with an opportunity to teach your child the right way, the appropriate way to ask for attention, like in this circumstance. And I just can't say that enough, that a lot of times we think of, oh, we need to ignore this, but we forget we need to teach a replacement skill, because right now the only way he knows how to get attention is when he hits his head, or when he screeches, or when he claps his hands, or whatever the behavior is. The next one is escape or avoidance. So if they're trying to escape an activity, the last thing you want to do is allow him to escape the activity. You want to prompt him through that activity and let him know, when it's time for math, you are going to do math, even if I have to help you. And then you want to teach them how to ask for a break. That would be, if they're trying to escape, you want to teach them how to appropriately ask to escape a situation. It can, it can sound like, mom or a teacher, this is too hard. Can you help me? I need a 5-minute break. Anything that will appropriately allow them to leave the situation for a little bit and come back, and then maybe reevaluate. Often with escape, like if it's something challenging at school, how can we teach this child differently, which his teachers at his previous school were not getting. They just kept teaching the same way every day. He wasn't getting it. So to a new school, they taught him using touch math, and he gets it. So that was the way now he doesn't need to escape from math, because now he gets it. For access to a desired item or activity, you can't allow your child to engage in this inappropriate behavior and then win the item. And so, for example, this is like, my son is a runner, and so he will run away from me impulsively, and he'll hit that elevator button. So if you see me like darting after him down the hallway and taking him out, it's because I don't want him to reinforce himself. Okay, so I may look crazy, but my reasoning is, if he goes darting and he hits that elevator button, I can yell until I am blue in the face about running away from me and about touching the elevator. He did what he wanted, and he's basically like, I got it, I did it. It doesn't matter. So you have to be cognizant of that. If that's what he was running away to do, and he is allowed to do it, he reinforced himself. There's nothing else you can do at this point, because he won. And so, in our house, my phrase is ask first. He is constantly, he touches the TV all the time. And, honestly, I would love it if he could touch the TV and put his show on, but he doesn't stop there. He starts programming shows to record on a set schedule. He, even more importantly, erases my shows. And, I'm not tech savvy enough to go back in there and retrieve them. So I was actually taping episodes of How I Met Your Mother, Craig, that I had missed, and he deleted a few. And I was like, now I'm going to miss this whole, chunk. And I said, well, it's already too late, because he deleted my show and he taped his show. He got what he wanted already, because I didn't realize. So now I have the rule, ask first. If you ask me, I might let you, work the remote, or more likely, I will do it for you. But once you touch it, now our rule in the house is you've lost TV. And so it's beyond timeout. It's easy to say, okay, you touch the TV, you're going to go to timeout. Now he touches the TV, and his consequences, you lose the TV. And that's honestly harder on me. But it's important, because if I don't remain consistent with this behavior, he's going to keep doing it. He's going to keep reinforcing himself, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And he has no fear when it comes to breaking my electronics. He recently did something in his iPod, and you couldn't, he erased the internet. How do you erase the internet from the iPod? I don't know, but he did. And so Eric came home, and he had to actually wipe the entire iPod and redo it, because he couldn't get on. He couldn't get any apps. He couldn't get on his email. He couldn't do anything. And so it's functionally useless. He now no longer wanted his iPod, which previously was this huge reinforcer to him. So, excuse me. It's just really important that if that is what they're going for, you can't allow them to access that reinforcer. You have to block them at all costs, even if it's like diving in front of them to block it, okay? And then again, you want to teach them how to appropriately ask for that item or activity. Now, this one's really the hardest one, the sensory feedback or automatic reinforcement. The best advice I feel like I can give you here is that you want to teach them as an appropriate time and place for something. And so maybe you could say, well, I'm not going to use any names. If you'd like to, do da-da-da-da-da, you can go in your room and do that. And then when you're finished, then you can come out and join us. And that kind of, allows, if he has this need, this sensory need to do something, you're not shaming him, and you're not, yeah, exactly, but not in here, not in my kitchen, or you're not going to do it in the living room while you're watching TV. If you want to do this, you're going to go over here and do it in your room, outside, whatever the case may be. If you feel like it's something that they actually need to do, they have this sensory need, or if it's just something they enjoy, they like how it feels, what have you. I mean, all of you who have little boys, I'm sure, can relate to this one. I'm not even going to go there, but I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. I'm like, you can go do that in your room. So keep your hands out of your pants. I have 3 boys, okay? So God help me. Are there any questions so far about any of this? No? Okay, you're following me. Good. Okay, actually, before I go there, I don't have a slide for this, but I also want to talk about consistency and how important that is, both between spouses, caregivers, home and teachers, and also consistency day to day. Does anyone in here gamble? Anyone? Okay, you don't have to admit it. Okay. Well, the feeling that you get from gambling, isn't it a high? I mean, I live 2 hours away from Atlantic City. I don't go often because I could see how people could get addicted to it. The one-armed bandit right there, you sit there, give me my bucket of quarters, and you're like, cha-ching, and cha-ching. You don't win, the house wins. I mean, let's be honest, once in a while you win, but really, the house wins. That's why they stay in business. And the technical term for this is intermittent reinforcement, which means that once in a while you get reinforced for it, and sometimes you don't. But that keeps behaviors going so strong because that you're always reaching for that once in a while when you get reinforced. So Eric and I, years ago before we had children, when we had a social life, we went to Vegas, and I won $250 at a blackjack table. And I thought that was the big time. And so we went out. I was like, no, I'm walking. I'm not playing anymore. This is my money now. And we went out to the most amazing dinner. But I could see how that euphoria that is associated with winning, well, I won this time, I'm going to just keep going, and I'm going to keep going until I could win. Even though you keep losing, you keep remembering what happened an hour ago when you won. So now think about that in relation to your children. If they're looking, let's just say attention, because that one's really easy. If they're looking for your attention and 9 times you ignore it and 1 time you reinforce it, guess what you just did? You intermittently reinforce them. Think of the one-armed bandit. Okay, so you have to be consistent. You cannot reinforce them at all. And so again, it goes back to the functions. You need to know the function so that you're not reinforcing these behaviors. I feel like I had something else I wanted to say. I wish I had written it down, but I could always come back. Okay. So now I want to talk about utilizing motivation, and this is equally as important as reinforcement. Often I'll hear someone say, oh, well, we were working on this and I gave him a Skittle, but, he didn't want it. Well, okay, let's think about that. Chocolate is really reinforcing for me. And so if you generally offer me a piece of chocolate to do something, it's pretty good that I'm going to do it. As you all heard, I had a food poisoning on Monday, and if you offered me chocolate, I probably would have hit you because I didn't want it. So my motivation in this case was stronger than the fact that chocolate is generally considered a reinforcer for me. So you need to look at motivation also when you're talking about reinforcing your child. And the good thing about motivation is that you can manipulate it, okay, in your favor. You can manipulate situations to create a state of deprivation. So there's a continuum where you're deprived all the way to when you're satiated on something. And you want to put your child in a state of deprivation so that they want this item even more than when they normally do. So if, let's say, okay, for potty training, my Richie, my second son, really, really likes jelly beans. And so I thought, I was desperate at this point. I was like, what do you want? Like, you can have whatever you want if you pee in the potty. Like, I don't care. I'll give anything to you. And he wanted the jelly beans. So I immediately removed all jelly beans and put them up high. And he only had access to them now for peeing in the toilet. And that's significant because I deprived him. Okay, so I deprived him of them so that he wanted them more. And now they're a stronger reward because he doesn't have access to them at any other time. The only time he got them was for peeing in the potty. And another thing you could do, let's just say if you're trying to teach a skill, if you're trying to teach them to ask for a drink of water, be it signing, pictures, words, what have you, start feeding them potato chips. Guess what? They're going to get thirsty. Okay, so now they're going to be motivated to ask you for water. And so you really want to use motivation when you're teaching skills and when you're dealing with behaviors because it's so powerful, and I feel like it's often not mentioned. And I use this, by withholding toys, food, activities, anything. Peter loves trains, and so I potty trained him by using trains. We live in a town where it's New Jersey Transit. That's our local train service. They run right through the center of our town, and it's less than a 10-minute walk from my house. And, I used to take him for train rides all the time because it's like $1, and it's like this, like to him it's like, he likes the monorail at Disney better than the rides. Like, I'm the fool who still pays to go in, and my child would be happy just riding the monorail all day. But I used that to my advantage. All train rides stopped. And he had to earn them by peeing in the toilet. And it worked. My son is potty trained now, and he did it by earning train rides because I deprived him of train rides, and he wanted them even more. And so what I was saying here is also, let's move beyond the Skittles and the M&Ms. I mean, ABA is often associated with like M&Ms and Skittles, and basically people imagine sitting knee to knee with a child and they say, touch nose, here's your Skittle. Like, ABA's moved way beyond that. That's kind of what it was when I first started, and it's so much broader than that now, and there's so much more. So if that's your image of ABA, I want you to definitely erase that because it's way beyond that. And you can use anything for rewards. You can use blowing bubbles, you can use tickles, like I said, train rides, anything that your child likes and wants, you can use. It's their motivation. They're the ones who are going to have to dictate what you use. The other thing I would say is, as a general rule, like as an example, I gave this example years ago before GPSs, so let's pretend GPSs don't exist. Would anyone in this room think that I would find a pencil motivating? No, right? Because I don't. If you, hey, if you run a mile, you're going to earn this pencil, I'd be like, yeah, it's not worth it, thanks. But one time I got lost, and so I had a cell phone but no GPS at this point. So I called Eric to ask him to give me directions, and I couldn't find a pen or a pencil in the car to write everything down. And I'm like, I would do anything right now for a pencil. So see, I was deprived of a pencil and I really needed one. So get creative at home and deprive them of things. If you allow your child to use the remote, put it up high, hide it, and have them earn it in some way. Or, get really creative. If they like to wear matching clothes, take the shirt that matches those shorts and put it somewhere and, make them earn it. I mean, use their obsessions or their strong interests to your advantage. And, you can't block everything like the doctors were saying before. So use it to your advantage if you can, and try to tie it into, appropriate behavior or to teaching skills. Next, okay. You are a powerful reinforcer. Children love to interact with their parents and caregivers, so use that too. You also want to catch your child being good. And this is way harder than it sounds. It's so easy when the children are engaging in negative behaviors to holler at them, to give them the look, to, anything. But it's a lot harder to acknowledge them when they're being good. Does everyone agree with that? Yes. But let me give you a question. If you spend 4 hours, 5 hours cooking Thanksgiving dinner and no one says anything about how good it is, how is that going to make you feel?
I'm not cooking it again.
Yeah, right? Exactly. You're not going to do it again. So how do you think Christian feels if he worked real hard on something and you don't even acknowledge it? He's like, well, I'm not going to do that again. Nobody even said anything to me. So you want to let them know when they do something good. And here's another thing. When they do something good, you might be like, oh, nice job, high five. Whereas if they're yelling, you're like, hey, don't do that. Okay, do you see the difference? Okay, guess what they like? The big reaction. So get cheesy, whatever it takes, and like, hey, you just did this, oh my gosh, and high fives and tickles, and make it a big reaction the same way you would if you were giving them the negative reaction. You know, the thing is, sometimes it makes us feel better to holler or to give like that big reaction when we're angry, but it's really a forced thing when you're reacting that way when you're happy and trying to tell them they did something well. But you have to remember that level that they're getting of reinforcement is really important, and they might like that really big, and chances are they do, that really big reaction that when, you know, your eyes bug out of your head and everything. So keep that in mind. So you want to look at them, you want to talk to him, encourage him, acknowledge him when he's being good. And only give your attention in the absence of inappropriate behavior, because negative attention is better than no attention. So remember, that yelling is attention. Now I need to, you know, put this up on my wall because it's so easy to do that when I hear them like wrestling in the living room and I'm trying to do the dishes. I'm like, guys, can't you just stop that for a minute? You know, and then I've just reinforced it and I know it, but it's much easier, you know, said than done. But this is the ideal that I'm presenting to you right now. Okay, and then, so basically I just want to also give you the definition of reinforcement. Reinforcement is defined as a stimulus that follows a behavior, and it increases the likelihood that that behavior is going to occur in the future. So a lot of times people will say, oh, I gave him reinforcers, I gave him Skittles, I gave him M&Ms, I gave him this. If they're not increasing the appropriate behavior, they're not reinforcers, they're rewards. And you're hoping that they're reinforcers, but they're not. If they're not increasing the appropriate behavior, they are not reinforcers, because by definition, a reinforcer increases the behavior that you want to see. So you need to reevaluate. There are things called preference assessments you could do, and actually like someone at school, psychologists or whatnot could do this, that will help you narrow down what your child is motivated by. But I think chances are you probably know better than anyone at school what your child likes, and so you really need to use that. But again, know that, you know, if your child just had a huge dinner, those jelly beans might not be reinforcing for him in the moment. Maybe, like, you know, a TV show would be more reinforcing. Or, you know, you really have to look at the situation and see in that moment what is going to work more. Where's their motivation in this moment? So therefore, if reinforcement increases behavior, do not give it for behaviors that you do not want to increase. So again, think the one-armed bandit. You know, that one time that you reinforce a behavior with your attention, with an object, if, you know, whatever, that's all it takes. And now they're going to keep going, trying to get that behavior, trying to get, you know, that reward again. And then I also want to talk about bribery versus reinforcement. A lot of people, when they're learning about ABA, will say, oh, this just sounds like bribery. You know, this isn't something I want to do. And what I'm going to tell you the difference here is that bribes are dependent on a negotiation, whereas reinforcement is not. So an example I will give you, let's say you go to Target, and normally your child has a behavior in Target, whatever it may be. What I'll do is I'll say to Peter, before we go into Target, if you can walk nicely through Target, I'm very clear. I don't say good behavior because that's so broad. It's too much, you know. I'll say you need to walk nicely, you need to keep your voice quiet, and you can't take anything off the shelves, because he's like a little klepto. He grabs things and I say, no, you know, I'll find it in his pocket later. I'm like, what? You just took that. Like, you can't do that. So that would be, I'm setting up a situation for reinforcement. I am letting him know the deal in advance. You do this, I give you this. It's clear, it's out there. Okay, bribery would be if we walk in a Target and he collapses to the floor and starts screaming, and I say, okay, I will give you jelly beans, I will give you marshmallows, if you get up, and I start getting, that's bribery, because now in this case we're like negotiating about what's going on, and he's in control, not me. You need to be in control. And so you need to set the stage beforehand, and you really need to follow through. If you set the stage that you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to earn this, and they don't do it and you give it to them anyway, guess who's in control? They are. So again, this is hard. I mean, it's so much easier to say, like, are there any drugs out there that, like, can fix this? Because, trust me, it would be so much easier. But, for me, the anxiety about giving him drugs is that he can't necessarily tell me the side effects that he's feeling. And, this should always be your first line of defense. If you can try this first, try these methods, be consistent about it, and give it some time. I mean, it's going to take longer than a week, but give it some time, be consistent, and I believe you will see results. But like I said, it's hard. It's really hard, and it takes a lot to stick with it and to be consistent. So some examples of reinforcement would be like descriptive praise, like you're sitting so nicely, you're waiting so patiently. General attention, where you're looking at them, smiling at them. I give my kids the thumbs up a lot. General praise, good job, wonderful. I just said this, high fives, thumbs up. And the other thing I do is praise peers. So this is where my poor middle child, gets forgotten sometimes, because he'll sit nicely and Pete is engaging this like completely inappropriate behavior. So I will just say, wow, Richie, you are sitting so nicely, and I'll throw him something, a jelly bean, whatever, and say, I like that. And I'll ignore Pete completely and just walk away. And he's like, WTH just happened. I'm on the floor and she didn't even look at me. Instead, Richie's getting attention, and all he's doing is sitting and watching, his show, or he's sitting and looking at a book. So you want your child to see that the appropriate behavior is what gets your attention, and it's what gets the reward. Whereas their inappropriate behavior, yeah, do it, but you're not getting anything, and you're not getting my attention either. So that's important for them to see that. Okay, I don't want to go there yet. Okay, I'd also like to talk about our expectations for our children. I'm really sad that Emmett's not here right now, but I'm going to pick on Nigel for a minute. Nigel, do you know how to run? You do? Okay, good. I signed us up for the New York City Marathon. It's in about 2 weeks. Will you be ready? No? Okay. Will everyone agree that you need to train for a marathon? We all know how to run in this room, I think, right? But can we all run a marathon? Absolutely not. Emmett recently ran a marathon, which is why I was going to talk about him. But so let's think about that. So we all agree we can all run. We all have that ability. Well, why can't we run a marathon? Because that's asking too much. We can run, I could run to like the Dunkin' Donuts. That's like about it. And then, but asking me to run a marathon, it's not possible. My body cannot do that without like a ridiculous amount of training. And so think about that now with your kids. I remember last time when we talked about this, Steph brought up that Sydney was having behaviors when they would go shopping, and she would last for about 5 minutes in the store, and then she'd start melting. Okay, so think about this with the running example. She can handle 5 minutes in the store. So what you need to do is do that 5 minutes, reward her, and get out. So don't go on a time when you really need to shop. You need to teach her that 5 minutes of appropriate behavior is great, end on your high note, and leave. And you gradually work that up until they can manage 6 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you actually can start to go shopping and run in and grab the milk, pay for it, and get out. But we often expect, Peter knows how to sit. Why can't he sit through this 40-minute lecture? Because he can only sit for 1 minute. We really need to work up to him sitting for 40 minutes. So you need to make sure your expectations are realistic and that you're being fair and not expecting them to do something that when you put yourself in that position, would you be able to do it? So let's think about that too. Okay, now extinction is the fancy term for the removal of reinforcement, and I know I can't remember her name, but the sleep expert that we saw the other day, she said things often get worse before they get better, and that is the truth here. So if you're using an extinction procedure where you're removing reinforcement, let's say in the past, whenever your child hits his head, you give him attention for it. And now oh my gosh, just by looking at him, I've been reinforcing this behavior. You're going to stop looking at him. But now you might see what's called an extinction burst, which means, well, wait, this used to work in the past. I would hit my head and Mom would look at me, and now she's not looking, so I'm going to hit it harder and longer until she looks at me. So this is you need to be even stronger right now, because they're going to have this burst, trying desperately to get that reward again. So anyway, this is something I would really recommend if you're going to try an extinction procedure, do under the guidance of a behavioral therapist. It's really tricky to do this stuff. But again, the consistency is what's so important. Once you find something and you know why the child is engaging the behavior and you find a consequence or a reward or what have you, stick with it and be consistent and give it time. Again, like we were saying with the running, how long did Emmett train to get ready for the marathon?
All fall and winter.
Okay, so we're talking like 6 months. I mean, that's a long time. And if he had just, thought, let me just train for 2 months, and he would have, maybe not been able to complete it, he would have been disappointed. I can't do this. No, you can. You just didn't give it long enough. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to give them enough time to try something. Changing behavior is really difficult. So be patient about it, but just keep at it and be consistent. And then there's redirection. When a child says or does something inappropriate, rather than have a big reaction, try to remain neutral. And again, I know this is easier said than done. I really do. But you want to neutrally direct them to an alternate activity if you can, or neutrally repeat the instruction that you gave them and then follow through with it physically if you have to show them what to do. You want to keep your instructions brief and simple. And as I said before, you don't want to say something like, you need to be good in Target. What does that mean? You need to give them specifics. You need to keep your mouth quiet. You need to walk nicely. You need to stay with me. Give them very concrete things that they can understand, because be good can mean something different to you than it does to your husband, than it does to your, your sister, whoever. So they need to know exactly what you are asking of them. You want to state it in the affirmative, not do you want to walk nicely, you want to tell them walk nicely, because then you're opening it up to them telling you no. And I often have used this one with Pete. I'll say to him, okay, well, you can get dressed or I can help you. And guess what he hates? Me helping him. So, again, you have to follow through with it. And I know Diana and I have talked about this, that, they don't want to be helped often. If they know how to do something, they don't want you to do it. So use that to your advantage. That can be the consequence, and you have to be neutral about it, and you have to follow through. And then with a compliance procedure, you give them verbal instruction, and if they don't comply, you want to physically guide them through it so that they know you mean business. Because if you say to them, don't touch the button, don't touch the button, don't touch the button, and you don't do anything about it, what have they learned? She's not going to do anything, so I'm going to touch the button. So you have to be able to follow through, and you have to be able to, give them the consequence when necessary, but also reward them when they don't. Like if Pete walks by an elevator without touching the button, we have to make a big deal about it, because his impulses are great. So that is all I was able to do in terms of slides. But if anyone has any specific questions, or if there's anything that I was not specific about, or that you want me to go over again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Jessica. These are some really valuable tools, and I'm going to ask for copies of slides. So,
I can email this to anyone. Yeah, this is no big deal.
Please. My concern, I think just as a relational psychologist, is what does this do for our kids in terms of teaching intrinsic motivation and self-awareness without the reinforcement?
Okay. I get this one a lot, too.
I bet you do.
I do. Dean, can I ask you a question? Would you continue to make your jewelry if no one was buying it, if you weren't getting money for it? No, because you need the money, right? That's an external motivator, but you need it, right? We all need extrinsic motivation to do things. And I think what you're afraid of is that Kehlani will require high levels of rewards throughout her life to do things. And that's not the case. You want to fade things out. But in the same way that I don't think any of us would show up for work every day if we didn't get a paycheck on Friday, our kids need a paycheck too. And so for their good behavior, you need to keep that in mind. And it's so easy, and so many parents before they're into ABA will say, well, he should do it because I told him to. He shouldn't need this to get it. Yeah, Ideally, he would do it because you told him to, but that's not where we are. So you need to look at, would you rather like stand firm in your position, or would you rather have your child do it? I'd rather have my child do it. So for right now, you know, like Petey no longer rides trains when he pees in the toilet. We faded that out. So that's exactly what you're going to do. So whatever Kaylani is doing, like whatever reward you're using for her, you just fade it to less. Like say right now, for every time she pees in the potty, she gets, you know, a Skittle. Well, now it gets a little tougher. Now it's every 2 times you pee in the potty.
She's not really interested in it anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that was just a random example, but
Another story.
yeah, we could talk about that later. Whatever it is, whatever the issue is that you're dealing with, you know, initially it might be a 1-to-1. So every time they do this behavior, they get the reward. Then you're going to fade that out, and you're going to say, oh, well, you know what, you've been doing so well. Now you have to do it 2 times, and then you're going to get the reward. And they might give you a little fuss in the beginning, kind of like, wait a minute, you just made this harder. But then they'll get it, and they're going to keep going, and then you're going to make it 3, and you know, you're going to very gradually. You don't want to go from 1 to 5. That's too much. That you're asking too much of them, like we were talking about the running example. So think about that. You have to go slow and steady, gradually increase your expectations, and gradually decrease that reinforcement. But you know, when I was potty training Richie, Petey started saying, well, I just pooped in the toilet, what can I have? And I looked at him and I said, you've been pooping in the toilet for 4 years. I said, you have a clean bottom, that's what you have. That's your reward. And so he kind of went, all right, you know, but I'm sure every once in a while I throw him a little bone once in a while, because I don't want him to then feel like he's being deprived of something. So I'm trying to be, you know, always aware of that. But that is the most important thing, that you start like on a really thick schedule of reinforcement to get the behavior going. And then you slowly fade it back. And, you know, because some things are not ever going to be intrinsically motivating for her. And so we need to keep it, though, even if it's something subtle or something small that she gets for doing this. It might always have to be in place. But like I said, I faded out the trains completely. He doesn't get them anymore in any way as a reward. It's just now for fun. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Hi, I've got a 2-part question.
Sure.
The first one is, what would you suggest if the child is terrorizing like their brother or hitting them? You can't just ignore that.
No.
So what would you do in that case?
Okay. Do you have any idea why?
It's usually attention. Probably
Attention. Okay. Then what I would do is pick up the victim and leave. Go in another room. Don't say anything. Just ignore the offender and go in your bedroom, like close the door, and you guys do something fun in there. Lots of laughter, you know, make it seem like this is where you want to be. You know, we're watching TV, we're doing tickles, we're reading stories. That's what I would suggest, because if you have to remove the offender, you're giving attention, and you might inadvertently give eye contact. They might like that physical when you pick them up and start moving them, you know. So I think it's easiest in this case to remove the victim and go do something fun.
Okay, thanks.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is, except she probably tried to start tearing up everything outside the door. She took him to another room.
Okay, yeah, that's hard.
All right, the second question is, if you, like I say, once we're done with homework, you know, you can have a treat.
Right.
And if she says after homework, well, I want to wait a little bit to have it, so I let her wait, and then she does something very negative.
Okay.
Do I take away the treat?
Yeah, okay. A deal's a deal, is what I'm going to tell you, and it was not for whatever behavior. It's so hard to do this, though, because I know you feel like you're reinforcing this negative behavior that happened in between this incident, but really, a deal's a deal, and if the reward was for homework, it's only fair that she did earn it. That would be a whole nother thing, like if you wanted to introduce something called response cost, where you can take things away, but I kind of feel like a deal's a deal. She did what she's supposed to do. Maybe you could just say to her, okay, this could be, you know, a way to maybe get around that. Okay, well, you did your homework, so you earned whatever, but you have to cash this in within 5 minutes. That's how long this reward's going to be here for. And if you don't want it, that's your choice, but it's this long, and hopefully it would, you know, happen before, that 5 minutes would be up before any of those negative behaviors would come out. I mean, I can't guarantee that, but you could set a time limit, because I've done that with my son. He hates to drink milk. He only drinks water. No juice, nothing. Water only. And, I felt like it was really important for him to drink milk. On the other hand, he loves to eat. So what I started doing at breakfast is I make his oatmeal and I show it to him and I say, okay, drink your milk and then you can have this. And at first he was like, crazy. And then he realized that, I sent him to school hungry on more than one occasion because he did not drink his milk. And my heart was like being ripped out because I'm like, what kind of mother sends her child to school? But again, Diane and I had talked about this. She's one of those mothers too. You have to be firm. If you want, it's important for him to drink his milk, which it is. You have to be firm and you have to be willing to follow through on these consequences. So I said to him, I'm never going to make you drink your milk, but if you don't drink your milk, you're not getting your oatmeal, and I know you're hungry. And then I just walk away, let him do it. And I was like, oh, and the other thing is I'm setting the timer. You only have 5 minutes to do this. If you don't do it in 5 minutes, we're brushing your teeth and we're getting you dressed. And then I did it. And it was hard. I'm telling you, it was really harder on me, I think, because I felt like a bad mother. I felt like, oh my God, he's now sobbing because he's like, no, can I have a second chance? I'm ready. I can do this. And I said, I'm sorry. I told you 5 minutes. And it really does work. It's hard. It's hard to do this stuff, but you have to figure out where their motivation is. So when he wakes up, this boy is ravenous. I can't even wait for the teenage years because I feel like we're going to buy Costco out. He is so hungry, and he's little. I mean, everyone has seen him. He's not a big boy, but he eats like you wouldn't believe. So he wakes up ravenous in the morning, and that's what I was able to use as my motivation. So try to think outside the box. If you want them to do a certain thing, take what they want and hold it over their head. And again, don't be afraid of the timer. Like, my son really loves timers and he understands them, and so he and there have been times when he gets frantic, he'll hold out, and then there's a minute left and he starts running and he's like, where's the milk, and he'll chug it like he's at a frat party drinking beer, but he does it. And I'm always like, it really would have been smarter if you had started drinking that when I first set the timer, and it wouldn't have been like this big mess. But it works. He gets it now, and like I said, he's gone to school hungry. But I also write notes to the teachers. He is not to eat any snacks all morning. They know. I'll say he is not to have any snacks all morning. He didn't drink his milk, so he did not get his breakfast. He gets nothing until lunch, and that is it. And if we were at home on a weekend, it would have been different. He would actually get nothing until the milk was gone. But you can't. I won't send his milk to school. So it's bad enough he gets no breakfast and no snacks, and that kind of does the trick. But take that and use it if you need to. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So for the littler ones, Ryan is 2.5. She doesn't like sitting in high chairs or strollers because she's very independent.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, she is nonverbal right now, and I'm not sure how much receptive language she has. So
Okay.
I'm looking at what you said. I know she's escaping and avoiding behavior. I want to prompt through, teach her, but I don't know if she would get that.
Okay, well, I also, maybe you want to, what would be called pair do you want her in the stroller because it's easier, right? And because you might need to go a far distance, she can't walk that far. I would say you want to maybe pair the stroller with reinforcement, and you want to make it more of a fun thing for her so that she starts to like it a little bit more. And also keep in mind what we were talking about before, with the marathon, maybe just expect her to sit in it for short little snippets and then let her take a break when she's walking. So in this case, if she's trying to escape, use that escape as the reward. So you can, would you think, there are visual timers that, where you can see it's red and it'll get smaller and smaller and then it's white. That could maybe be helpful if you say to her,
Getting her in.
okay, well in that case I would say start pairing it with rewards first. So is there anything she really likes that you could think of, iPad, phones? Okay, all right, then let her know, okay, when you get in the stroller you can have it, and you have to have it ready so she sees. So when she sits there, let her play with the phone for a minute and say, okay, stroller's done, take the phone away and get her out. But now you have to save this. She only gets it when she's in the stroller. And so you start to pair the stroller with really good things. And don't only use the phone, use other things too that she might like, so that she doesn't think every time she gets in the stroller suddenly she has access to your phone. But you want to pair it with really good things in her environment. And then slowly, increase the amount of time that you want to keep her in there. And you can maybe give her picture cards, a picture of her sitting in the stroller, and then a picture of her walking. And show her, okay, you sit in the stroller for, let's just say, 2 minutes, you start slow, and when the timer goes off, now you get to walk. And so she'll understand, I have no doubt, that correlation, because it's going to happen. She's going to see a picture of herself sitting, she's going to see the timer go, she's going to see herself staying, then she's going to get to walk for a little bit, and then you do it again. And eventually you're going to just build up, slowly, more time that she's expected to stay in the stroller. So you have the opposite problem. Pete only wants to ride in the stroller. He doesn't want to walk. And, it's hard. And so I'll do the opposite. I'll say, okay, you walk for this much, and then I'll put the baby in the carrier and break my back, and, you can sit for a little bit. But he needs that opposite reward. But so whatever they're trying to escape to, if you think it's an escape function, use that as the reward. And, okay? I hope I answered you, Liz.
I just want to make a comment. We had a behavior therapist. This is feels like 100 years ago, but it was around 1996 or 1997, who came in to the house and just watched all the things I was doing backwards. And one takeaway I had from him was, Emmett was like Petey. He was a runaway child, and he endangered himself on many, many occasions. And the behavior therapist said that extreme behaviors require extreme interventions. And we had many situations where he used to actually, when we'd be in a situation like this in a hotel, he would leave the hotel room in the middle of the night. He'd leave the room. He actually got an elevator one time in the middle of the night. So he would run away all the time in all situations. We barely left our home because we were afraid to. But we had a watershed moment at a place up in northern New Hampshire called Six Gun City, and we were there on vacation, and he disappeared. And it was one of those things, one of those places where it was the Old West, and they had to shoot out, and I went in to buy cowboy hats, and my oldest son and my husband came in, and they said, he's gone. And we did we had this routine, APB, you go this way, I'll go that way. We found him in line at the water slide. And he was having a good old time for himself, and everyone around him thought he was absolutely adorable. And my husband pulled him out of the line, took him out to the hot parking lot to the van, and they stayed there the rest of the day while my oldest son and I did all the fun things in the park. And if you were to ask him about Six Gun City, he would just shake his head. His behavior from that point on, it was really a watershed moment. And it was hard, obviously, on my husband and him. And it was hard for my oldest son, who felt that. But, it worked.
Yeah.
And it wasn't overnight. These things happen. It took a long time. But the kid you see today is not the kid that we experienced growing up. So, things can work.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a good example of automatic reinforcement. He was looking to do what he wanted to do, and that's what I always say about my son. He wants to do what he wants to do, and that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that, Diane.
I'm not sure how to make this make sense. In my brain, it's all jumbled up. Our daughter is kind of obsessed with the iPad. That's all she wants all the time. She says, please. And so, we try to reward that behavior, but how can we get her to want to do other things? Does that make sense?
It does. She's not alone. Have you noticed that everybody walks around with their head down looking at their devices? I think everybody is obsessed with the devices. I would say because it's something she wants so badly that you really need to save that. I don't think it's enough to just say please and get it. That would be my opinion. I would have her, engage in some behavior that you're looking for her to do. I don't know your daughter. I haven't had the chance to meet her yet. But if there's something she's working on, like you said, you're trying to work on her language. So maybe, after like a language session with like a speech therapist or something, she could earn the iPad, or, I would really deprive her, like we talked about before, of the iPad and save it for something big, because it's going to lose its value if she basically has free access to it every time she says please. Peter has his own iPod, but it is constantly kept up high, and he gets it for special things. And we found that works for us because he always wants it. And you will all catch him. I mean, like I said, I am far from perfect with this. He goes in my bag and takes my iPhone out, so I basically have to keep my bag on my body because, and even then, I mean, if I'm carrying the baby with the other hand, he sneaks right in there, quiet as a little mouse, and he opens it up and he grabs it. He's very slick. So it's just something that you want to keep in mind. If it's something she loves, I would really try to hold that as like a big reward for her for something and use it in that way. The other thing I'd be concerned about, which I am with my own son as well, is that they don't develop independent skills when they're sitting there just playing on the iPad. And you really want her to be able to keep herself busy other than using an iPad. And so I know you have a few children. Yeah, so it's hard to give them all, attention when they need it. But if you have people at school or therapists or anything, that maybe they could try to work on some independent play skills, and she could earn it for that. Like we're working right now with Peter on a picture activity schedule. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's basically like a binder. And you'll have maybe 5 activities in there, a picture, or if they can read, you can just have the word. And these are activities that usually have a clear beginning and a clear ending so that they know when they're done. If it's an activity that doesn't have a clear ending, you can incorporate a timer, but that's a little bit more advanced. I would say something like a puzzle is a great example of a clear beginning and a clear ending. Once the pieces are in, you're done. Reading a book, once you hit that last page, you're done. So these are good activities to include. When I say read, they don't literally have to be able to read. It could be that they point at a picture on every page and say what they see, or something like that. You have to tailor it to your child. But once they get to the last page, then that could be 10 minutes with the iPad or something, and that could be her reward for engaging in these independent, appropriate activities. But I would try to avoid giving it to her just for saying please, because it's a huge reward.
Sure, yeah, the thing, it seems like she doesn't have behavior problems unless she doesn't get it. So we're trying to figure out other rewards for not behaving. Does that make sense?
It does. And like we were talking before, the functions of behavior. So she's engaging in behavior for restricted access to the iPad. And she has to learn, though, that she doesn't get it when she wants it. She gets it when you two are ready to give it to her. And for engaging in appropriate behaviors or whenever you've decided is an appropriate time. So I would just continue to teach her. Is she using signs right now?
Just a little bit.
Okay, I think that's great. That's how I taught my son to talk. Actually, we exclusively used signs. And I know a lot of parents are afraid to use signs because they say, oh, I want my child verbal, I want them to talk, and guess what, we all do. But the research out there has shown that signs are more effective than pictures, or than, God forbid, nothing at all. I know some people will just abandon all of those and just keep working and hoping for the verbal. And again, we all hope for that, but you need to give your child a way to communicate. That's the most important thing. And I think a lot of people are turned off from signs because they think, well, I need to learn this, versus like the picture exchange communication system, which you look at it and it's a picture of a bike, and so you know that means bike. Anyone can understand that. And I've heard people say, oh, well, when they go into the community, people can understand the pictures, but not everyone knows signs. And that's true, but really, how often is your child engaging with strangers, and how often do you want them engaging with strangers? I know I don't. Peter runs up to people and pretty much sits on their lap and wants to have a sleepover, and it's terrifying. And so for me, it's also like, oh, I have to learn these signs now. Well, I've got news for you. If a 3-year-old with a developmental disability can pick up the signs, so can you. So it's hard, but it's like it's going to take effort. But in my opinion, and the research, it's not my opinion, the research has shown that it's basically, the fancy word is the topography for each sign is different in the same way that each word is different. So when you sign me, that's different from when you sign hi. Those are two different movements in the same way that me and hi sound different. When you're doing the picture exchange communication system, you're always engaging in the same action. There's no difference. So it's not similar to speaking language. And actually, I'm not saying it doesn't facilitate language. Frost and Bondi are wonderful, and everything that they do is great, but I think personally that a better way would be to sign, and so I think it's great that you're doing that with your daughter. And I would say, because that's something really important, giving her a way to communicate, like after a speech session might be the best time to give her the iPad, because that's going to be really hard for her, and that might be like really motivating for her if she knows after every speech session, when I do hard work, I'm going to get that iPad. It might really keep her going. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so that's a wrap.
Questions right now, because guess what? It's time to go on to our breakout sessions, and Jessica will be leading the behavior. And to reinforce your behavior.
Oh, stop. Lindsay. Oh my God, I shouldn't be included in this.
Of course you should. I know you helped.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to let Curtis do this because I'm going to break it.
Back at the bottom.
Thank you, but I did this, well, thank you very much.
It's reinforcement.
You're saying no to fine wine?
No, I'm not going to say no to fine wine. You know what I like, but...
Right now, if you like it. I'm holding